Hey, what's up guys? In this week's video we're going to be doing something new. We're going to be making several different rings, and the reason for that is we just got sent a care package from the Opal dealer. They were nice enough to sponsor this video. You can see they sent us, this is probably 30 different colors of opal. And so we've got a lot of different colors to choose from, so I didn't want to just make one ring because we've got all these options obviously. So we're going to be making a few, and I haven't designed them yet. So I thought it'd be fun to include you guys in the design process. You'll kind of see how I'll do it. We'll come up with the designs and then I'll check back in with you guys, kind of tell you why exactly that I'm trying a few things. And some of the rings, they might not turn out how we're hoping. They might just be kind of a dud. Some of them might look better than we were imagining. So that's just kind of how it goes for ring making. And because we just barely got these, I haven't had time to experiment with them. So I wanted to give you guys a really good idea of all the different possibilities that are possible with opal. And so I've got all these different materials here. These are just some of my standard glowstone materials that we can integrate. If we want to do a darker ring, we can use the meteorite shavings. If you want to do a tropical theme on a ring, we could use turquoise because it's a nice light aqua tropical color. You get the idea. We've got our glow powders, diamonds, 5 different ring blanks, and then we've got all of our different color pigments here. So I'll get the ring designs figured out and then I'll check back in with you. All right, so we've got all 4 of our designs picked out. I'm going to briefly explain the designs and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so this first one is going to be a black on black theme. We've got our black ceramic blank ready to go here. And then we're going to be using green glow powder. It's the brightest glow color, and that's important because we're going to be mixing it with black, which can detract from the glow significantly. And so we're going to be going with a black powder that glows green. And then we've got our black fire opal. I think this is going to work really well for this design. The opal itself is a fairly dark color, but the light that it gives off is really colorful. It's got a lot of different like greens and reds, oranges in there. And so I think it'll look really nice. And then we'll throw in some meteorite shavings. That'll give it just a slight, really subtle glimmer to it. We're not gonna use chunks, just the shavings. And then just some pieces of amethyst. It's fairly dark. It's a little bit transparent, so it should give the ring some depth. So I think overall, this will be a really solid design. All right, the second one we're going to have be our tropical themed ring. You've got a lot of bright colors. I've got an aqua glow here, which I think goes with the aqua theme well, as well as the turquoise. And we're going to be mixing it with yellow. So it's going to be a super bright, really fun looking ring. And then we've got a bunch of different colors of the opal, so that should do a really good job of displaying that. And then I thought a Damascus steel blank for this one would work really well, just because it's kind of that wavy, kind of, it reminds me of the ocean or the beach pattern that it has to it. So that should be a really cool theme overall. Okay, and for this third one, there's not a really strong theme to it. All of the other designs, they have a fairly strong theme, so I wanted to do one that was a little outside of the box. This is gonna be kind of a wild card. It might turn out bad, it might turn out good. I have a lot of high hopes for it, but we'll just have to see. We're gonna start with the tungsten carbide blank. We're gonna be adding some copper, diamonds, as well as 2 different colors of the opal. We've got turquoise ocean as well as space titanium, and then we're going to use blue glow for this. So I think overall it's got a lot of potential, but we'll just have to wait and see. For the last one, we've got a theme to it as well. It's based off of the name of this opal, lava rock opal. So you can see it's just a kind of a black opal, just really dark, but it's got kind of a purpley burgundy red hue that it gives off. So I think it looks really cool. It's a nice little subtle reflection that it does. And so I want to do 2 different glow colors. So I've got orange as well as red, and I'll actually swap these up. We'll use red, and we'll mix in a little bit of red pigment as well as just a tiny bit of purple. That should give us a nice, more of a maroon color. I might even add a little bit of black to darken it up. And then the other one we'll just do pure black as well. And so I think all these colors, they're gonna go together really well. And then the 2 different glow colors, that should look cool at night as well. And then lastly, we're going to be using a cobalt chrome blank. And so cobalt chrome, like you've heard me say in other videos, it's a really white metal, so it looks like almost platinum. And so this should contrast with the rest of the inlay really nicely. And I think we should be left with a really clean looking ring. So those are all 4 of the designs. Let's go ahead and get started on making them. Now I've got everything ready to go. We're ready to switch over to the lathe and actually get started. So I'm going to start out with our black ceramic ring blank, and you'll notice I put a couple of layers of electric tape around my ring mandrel, and that's to cushion the ring. And the reason for that is because my ring mandrel is made out of hardened steel, it can actually chip the ceramic. So even though ceramic is actually a really tough, durable material, it is prone to getting chipped by really hard materials like hardened steel, especially when you're applying all that force to it. So now I'm just inlaying all of our different materials, and it's definitely not rocket science, but it is something that takes quite a bit of experience to get down, to get the spacing of the materials exactly how you want it. And then in this case, where we're adding so many different pieces of the material, we got opal, we have the meteorite, the amethyst, we've got the glow powder, all of that. It's kind of tricky to get them all to show up how you want it, and so that just kind of comes with experience. But basically I'm just making sure that I get a few decent chunks of amethyst that are going to be visible, and because that's the biggest piece, that's what I'm going to start out with. And then the shavings as well as the opal pieces, those are a lot smaller, and so I'm able to just kind of put those in wherever they'll fit. But one thing to note, it's really important to try to make your spacing look organic on these rings. If you just kind of throw the stuff in there, your brain will kind of naturally put it in a pattern, and once you make the ring, it just won't quite look natural. It just looks kind of weird. So the whole time I'm making this, I'm just thinking about the materials I'm using, where I'm placing them, and how it'll actually look in my finished ring. So we're pretty much done with the first ring. I think it turned out beautifully. I really do love the colors that the opal gives off on such a subtle ring, but still so colorful. But we do need to finish polishing this up, but I'm going to wait till the end once I'm finished with all of these rings. I was just doing this over the course of a couple of days, just whenever I had the time, I'd go make a ring, film the process, do all of that. And then once I'm done with all of them, we'll polish them all up, get them ready for display, and then we'll show them off at the end. Now I'm switching over to the tropical ring, and the same rules apply here. I'm just being very aware of the materials I'm using, the ratios of all of them, the color, all of that, and then I'm just building it up slowly. I'm using my CA adhesive as I go, making sure it's all set in place, and then I use the accelerator for that to make sure it's all hardened. And then once we're done, we're ready to start grinding it down. And it's important to be hardening your CA adhesive as you go, because once you grind into that, if there's some wet spots or some gooey spots, it's going to completely mess up the look of the ring, and it can also make a huge mess, so you want to be very careful of that. I'm just making sure to harden it as I go, and then once we're done, I'm ready to grind it down, polish it up. And then this one I need to treat with acid in order to get that Damascus steel pattern to show up everywhere. And so again, we're going to set this aside, and then once we're all done with the inlaying of the 4 rings, we'll come back, finish up all the rings, and then we'll just show them off at the end. Now this ring was a lot more tricky and took a few hours longer than normal, and that's because it had diamonds in it. And the reason why that's so difficult is because diamonds are so hard that they'll completely destroy any sandpaper that they touch, so it makes it impossible to polish these rings using traditional methods if you have the diamonds sticking out. And so you need to be very careful not to have any of them poking out, or else you need to go in and individually remove them by hand and then fill in the hole that was left there. And so that's why this ring was so much harder than the other ones. Just those diamonds make for a lot of extra work. Now I'm ready to start work on the lava themed ring, and this one wasn't too tricky, but what's important to note is that we were using 2 different colors of glow powder, and so that can be fairly difficult to get to turn out in the ratios that you want, and so I'm just being careful as I do that. With experience, you'll kind of figure out how it goes. One thing that can be tricky is if you're just doing layer after layer of consecutive colors, once you build it up to the size that you want it and then grind it back down, it might not be how you imagined it, and so you need to be careful not to do your layers too thick. That way if you grind into it, you might be left with a huge patch of just the red when you wanted the red and black to show up. So you need to be doing small layers and a lot of them. That way there's a lot of red and a lot of black no matter where you cut into the ring. So now all of the rings are inlaid and we just need to etch the Damascus steel ring and then we'll be ready to polish them all up. So on my right here I've got a cup of muriatic acid and I'm adding a bit of hydrogen peroxide into that to make it react a lot quicker. And then on my left I've got baking soda. That'll neutralize the acid. That's important for safety. And then once I'm done with the ring, when I take it out, I'll put it in the baking soda water and that'll make sure it's safe to touch. So now we're ready to polish all of the rings up and just see the final results. This is super exciting because I'd spent, like I said, a couple of days working on these and I'm just ready to polish them up and be completely done with them and see how the final process turned out. And so on the left I have a medium polish, on my right I have a more of a fine polish, and I'm just quickly going through and polishing all of the rings. I don't want to overheat it and cause any melting. And then within a couple of minutes I got all the rings done, and you can check these out. They just turned out so beautifully. I love when they're just fresh off the polisher. They all have that super shiny reflective finish, and you can see there's just 4 different rings. They're all completely different and they're completely unique and really fun for a lot of different reasons. And so all 4 of the rings I was actually pretty impressed with how they turned out. The tropical ring, I would have liked to get a lot more of that pink color in there, that pinkish red, but other than that, even though tropical themed rings, they're definitely going to be polarizing, so you either love them or hate them. But overall, especially for a tropical ring, I think it turned out pretty well. And so just all of these rings, I was super happy with the way they turned out. It was a lot of work. Some of them, like I had a lot of trouble with the diamonds on the tungsten ring, and so that was tricky to work with, but it's just so worth the effort. The way they turned out is just so beautiful. And in these final pictures here, you can see another ring that we experimented with. Walker actually made this. He's one of our ring makers, and it's supposed to be kind of like a reptile scale themed ring, so we put a lot of that green opal in there, and then we surround it in black, and that's just to give it contrast around all the edges. If you think of the opal as like a reptile scale, and then you just think of the black around it just to give you separation between the scales, that was the look we were going for. I think it's kind of spot on. I really like the way it looks, and it kind of gives you kind of like a Godzilla vibe or whatever. And so super happy with all of these rings. Opal is such a fun material to work with. We're definitely going to be throwing a lot of these up on the website, and opal is kind of like its own thing. There's so many different colors and options, and so I think we're going to have kind of like opal versions of our glowstone rings. It'll be a little bit tricky to integrate, but just basically check out the link in the description. We'll get it worked out and figured out, and it'll probably get better over time. But yeah, that was the video. If you enjoyed it, you can go ahead and give it a like, leave a comment or suggestion if you have one for me. I read all of the comments that I get on my YouTube videos, and the feedback that you guys give is just super helpful. I love that. And also, if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm really active over there. I make posts, we do giveaways, discounts, things like that. So you can follow me over there. Of course, I've got a link to that down in the description. Final thank you to the Opal dealer for sponsoring this video. It would not have been possible without them, and just having so many different colors of opal at our disposal is just going to be so handy, so useful. Opal is fairly expensive, and I've always wanted to mess around with it, but I just haven't had the capital to invest in just all these different colors. So huge shout out to them for making this video possible. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.